All right. Well, this is a this panel in particular covered an upcoming series that I was decidedly less enthusiastic about than the previous two. That series being Star Wars Rebels. It's sort of a follow up to Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which, as you all know, was taken off the air recently. I'm guessing because Disney bought Star Wars, and they didn't want another series being aired on Cartoon Network. Maybe it's just because I've heard that Disney ended the series to make way for a new animated series on their network. I don't really know the specifics, but I do know that I liked the Clone Wars. I know that the Clone Wars had a lot of fans. Actually, both versions of Clone Wars had a lot of fans. The Gendy Tartakovsky version and the computer-generated version that we got for a few years. So Star Wars Rebels was announced almost immediately following the cancellation of the Clone Wars. It's going to take place in the 20-year gap between Episode 3 and 4. So it's going to take place during a time similar to when the original trilogy takes place. The Empire is out there. It's hunting down Jedi. Blah blah blah. We're going to see stormtroopers. We're going to see more iconic Star Wars imagery, or at least iconic Star Wars imagery from the original trilogy. At least more so than we did in the Clone Wars, which again was set in the prequels, during the prequels. So there's that, and the panel itself was attended by Dave Filoni, who worked on the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender. He was a very prominent figure in the Clone Wars series. He was a creator. I believe he was the supervising director. He directed several episodes, so he was one of the spearheads behind the whole operation, as it were. There was executive producer Simon Kinberg, who recently brought us X-Men: Days of Future Past. He was the writer on that. I don't really know how involved he will be in the actual creative process of this show, or at least not in the long run, because I said in a previous video that I was surprised at how involved David Slade got in the production of Hannibal. So I don't really know if Simon Kinberg will reach the same level of involvement if he'll write on any of the episodes. He probably will write at least one, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that will extend into future seasons, if there even are any future seasons. And aside from them, there were a number of the principal voice actors: Freddie Prinze Jr., Vanessa Marshall, Steve Bloom, Tia Sircar, and Taylor Gray. Now, one thing I noticed from the footage displayed at this panel, the creators' attitudes, along with the footage that I've already seen, is that they really seem to want to capture the feeling of the original trilogy. They really seem to want to recapture that magic, recapture the feeling of the crew of the Millennium Falcon, basically kind of recreate the feeling of adventure and lighthearted interaction between this group of ragtag main characters. Which, I can respect that. I mean, it seems like from a narrative and character standpoint, they're trying to get back to the roots. However, I'm just going to say right off the bat, I just don't like the animation style. It could potentially grow on me after a while, maybe after I've seen a few episodes. And I am still interested in the series as a whole, considering the positive reaction that I hear it's getting. But just based on what I've seen of the animation, I just don't like it. Not that it feels flat like the Clone Wars felt at first, or not flat, but very stiff, very motionless. Obviously, the Clone Wars got better, a lot better, in fact. But you know how the 2008 through 2013-14 Clone Wars series, it was not trying to replicate this style, but just in terms of the character designs, it really did have this sort of Genndy Tartakovsky influence, you know, with the very angular character designs. So there's that, and also there was a certain level of detail. Actually, there was a surprising level of detail in a lot of the textures and designs that went into the many different aspects of the Clone Wars. I mean, a lot of the time I was surprised that they could get away with a lot of the stuff they got away with, in terms of attention to detail on a 22-minute episode, particularly with stuff like with dust, sand, fire, the stubble on clone troopers' faces. Real small details like that, I think, what is missing from this new series. This new series, the animation and the art style really look like they took Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars and just completely Disney-fied it. Now, I don't mean for that to sound like a negative connotation, although it kind of is. Let me explain. Gone, it seems, is the extensive detail behind a lot of the characters. I mean, yeah, you could argue that the character designs in the Clone Wars TV series, at least on paper, seemed very basic. They seemed very angular, like Genndy Tartakovsky's animation. But again, there were just these details, whether it be the specks of dirt on the clone armor or stuff like that. It seems this whole series, this new series, Star Wars Rebels, just looks way too clean for my taste. It looks way too. It looks like a Disney. It looks like a Disney show. The color palette just seems very, very bright, very almost, for lack of a better term, cartoonish. Are they trying to make it more appealing to the eye for kids? Are kids not going to want to be challenged by the very dark color palette that a lot of the time, especially in the later seasons, the Clone Wars was able to portray? I don't know, and to be honest, this very lighthearted looking animation kind of clashes with the scenario that they're trying to get across in the narrative. You know, with the Empire taking over everything and hunting down Jedi, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think that the somewhat darker look of the Clone Wars, or at least later Clone Wars, would actually have been more appropriate for this period in the Star Wars mythos. However, the voice acting, or at least the voice acting that I've seen, looks, or at least sounds like it will be fairly solid. I really like a lot of the cast members that they're getting. You know, Freddie Prinze Jr. I like how they're getting. On paper, it seems like they're trying to replicate or copy the relationship between Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, but the difference being the roguish type character is actually a Jedi, who is Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character, this guy named Kanan. He's this, like I said, he's this roguish swashbuckler type character, and to see that in a Jedi is actually kind of refreshing. And what actually makes it kind of confusing for me is that this show is being marketed by the creators as this as almost like an origin story of the Rebel Alliance. I mean, it's this ragtag group of rogues who could potentially plant the seeds, as it were, for the eventual Rebel Alliance that we see in the original trilogy. And I'm thinking to myself, didn't we already do that in the Force Unleashed, the first Force Unleashed game? It seems like we did. So are they retconning the Force Unleashed? I can understand retconning the second game because the second game ends in a cliffhanger, but the first game, I would argue, works fairly well as a self-contained story. And to see them kind of retcon that with this very kid-friendly looking TV series to kind of replace the intensity of the Force Unleashed with this more cartoonish version kind of bothered me a little bit, and maybe that's kind of where my negative feelings on this are coming from. But I'm not going to completely write the show off. I am going to stick around, and I am going to see how it's faring, especially given, again, the positive reaction that I've heard about it. I mean, some online articles I've read are really holding this show in very high esteem. So I'm going to stick around, despite the fact that again, they're kind of pissing on the expanded universe, particularly with the inclusion of Luminara. And Luminara, for those who don't know, is this Jedi character from the prequels, or a cameo character from the prequels, who was subsequently expanded upon in the Clone Wars. She was voiced by Olivia d'Abo. I don't know if she'll continue to voice her in this show, but she showed up as this prisoner of the Empire, and I actually did my research on this. This character was supposed to have been killed in Order 66, which was the Jedi purge of Revenge of the Sith. Okay, so she's supposed to have died. So actually bringing her back is yet another instance of them kind of pissing on the expanded universe. And beyond that, it's not really clear how involved some of the more iconic characters of Star Wars will be, because we saw old Ben Kenobi in the trailer, still voiced by James Arnold Taylor. But we see nothing of Darth Vader. We don't really see the Emperor. All we see is the Sith Inquisitor, or just the Inquisitor, who's voiced by Jason Isaacs, and he looks like Pinhead from Hellraiser. Don't really know how he'll fare as a villain. Jason Isaacs, like I said, is another really good actor who they roped into the voice cast. There is this certain danger of how will they make each of these Imperial villains interesting in their own right? How will they make each of them memorable? Because the Empire, by its very nature, is very uniform. It's very lacking in variety. That's the whole point. So again, how are they going to make this admiral differentiate himself from this other admiral, and so on and so forth? Or is the Empire even going to be the only bad guy in the show? Probably not. So yeah, I'm willing to stick with it. I'm not quite as excited about it as I want it to be, but given the people working on it, and given what they seem to be setting out to do, I'm going to bear with this. Star Wars Rebels, I could take or leave at this point.